Welcome to your City Commission meeting. Please turn off or silence all cell phones during the meeting. In accordance with the Kansas Open Meetings Act, the meeting will be viewed on Channel 2 and via Facebook Live. The public is encouraged to view the meeting using one of those options. The Leavenworth City Commission meeting is open to the public with limited seating capacity. Refer to the agenda packet on the city website for instructions on reserving a seat and/or submitting comments. Meetings are televised every day on Channel 2 at 7 p.m. and midnight and available for viewing on YouTube and Facebook Live. Now we will call the meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance followed by a silent meditation. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. First item on the agenda, I'll go to the podium for this. Ms. Simmons, would you like to come forward, please? This is the Mayor's Award for Community Service, presented to Sandy Simmons. Sandy Simmons has been a founder and a leader of Leavenworth Backpack Buddies since the organization was formed 14 years ago. It is estimated that Sandy has organized and delivered backpacks to 500 kids per year, or 7,000 plus kids over the years. She has organized, packed, and delivered over 14 years, 250,000 plus backpacks. Wow. Sandy has worked with the school district to get food insecure kids signed up. She has worked with many individuals, churches, and organizations to pack food monthly and deliver the food to the schools weekly. And raising funds has always been high on Sandy's list of accomplishments. She has helped raise funds for a budget of $90,000 to $100,000 each year to pay for the food. Sandy has kept Leavenworth Backpack Buddies debt-free with no extra expenses other than the cost of food, helping to feed kids in Leavenworth for 14 years. Sandy, I've known you for a long time. I hope this was a surprise because a lot of people knew about it. Anyway, I would like to present you the Mayor's Award for Community Service.
Well, I'm a little overwhelmed because I didn't know that this was why I was coming here. I came here to talk to you about Backpack Buddies and to only say a few words. So I'm humbled and overwhelmed, and thank you very much, Mayor. You know, it's been a good long run. We have fed so many kids. These are kids who are at-risk kids, food insecure children who may need a little help with food over the weekends. So this is not an award for me. This is a community deal. Did you know about this? So, I was going to say, you've done your homework. Nancy sent me an email and said, "Can you come to the commission meeting?" I said, "Could you give me some details?" I didn't get much except could I come, so here I am. Bill Geiger and Carl Johnson, Rich Keller, if you know Rich Keller, they're in Montana or somewhere exotic like that. But we have a little leadership group that kind of makes sure this happens. And in a military town, I've always wanted to be able to say I'm a logistics person. So actually, I'm a retired educator. I taught school for 41 years. So I'm the one that makes sure the food gets here and that we get it out. And it's changed a lot over the last couple of years, as you can imagine. Everything's different. But we're still feeding kids on the weekends, and we continue to do that. We'll be starting year 15. Hundreds of volunteers, 25 churches and civic groups around the community. Raise your hand if you've ever packed any of the backpack food. Anybody here ever done any of that? So anyway, it's been quite a ride, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention also Studdards. Studdards let us move the food from Second Harvest, where we purchase it, to their warehouse where we used to sort it. Now we just move the boxes around. But Studdards have been a wonderful help to us too. And then they load it back on one of their trucks and I go with them around town. I've met some of the most wonderful people you can ever imagine delivering the food. We take it directly to the churches. The churches deliver it out to the schools each week. So thank you so much. I'm so surprised and so humbled, and it's a community effort. So this is a great community to live in. We take care of each other, and especially kids. So
Phil, you helped me do this. Would you like to say anything?
Oh, you said it all.
Thank you, Sandy.
thank you.
We're not going to make you stay for the whole meeting if you don't want to, but we're glad to have you tonight.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next item on the agenda, consideration of previous meeting minutes. Any comments or corrections on the previous meeting minutes? From May 11, 2021. Do I have a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move to accept the minutes from the May 11th, 2021 regular meeting as presented.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please begin voting with Commissioner Griswold.
Aye.
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 And I vote aye. Thank you, 5-0. All right, next item on the agenda, public comment. Public comment is for items that are not on the agenda or receipt of petitions. Public comment is limited to 2 to 3 minutes, and no action will be taken by the commission on public comment items. And please state your name and address. Is there any public comments tonight on anything not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on. Next item on the agenda is acceptance, dedication of land for public purposes, Eisenhower Marketplace final plat.
This would be Julie Hurley, the Director of Planning and Community Development.
Okay, Taylor's going to get up the plat here on the screen in just a minute, but this is a plat for a 2-acre plat for the Eisenhower Marketplace property. This is an 11-acre 2-lot final plat that the Planning Commission considered at their May 3rd, 2021 meeting. Again, this is just, we're here for acceptance of land for public purposes, and with this plat, there is no right-of-way. It is just public utility easements that are being dedicated as part of this. So there is a rezoning request that's associated with this. It's item 10 on our agenda, but we can go ahead and take an action on this plat right now. If you have any questions, I can answer those for you.
Okay. Is there someone that wants to speak on this? Okay.
That'll be during the rezoning.
During the rezoning.
Yep,
Okay.
yep, item 10.
Okay, so acceptance and dedication of land for public purposes, Eisenhower Marketplace. Is there any other comments or questions for Ms. Hurley? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve acceptance, dedication of land for public purposes, Eisenhower Marketplace, final plat.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please begin voting with Commissioner Preisinger.
Aye.
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 5-0. Okay. Next item is acceptance, dedication of land for public purposes, Adams Valley final plat.
Okay, this is another plat request and accepting the land for public purposes as part of this. This is the Adams Valley final plat. If you'll probably recall, we had a rezoning request for this property that the commission considered a couple of months ago. So this is a 4.76 acre, 18 lot final plat for Adams Valley, located at property currently addressed as 1440 and 1460 Quincy Street. Property is zoned R16 high density single family. The Planning Commission considered this plat at their May 3rd meeting and voted unanimously to approve it. As you can see, the land for public purposes as part of this plat is some right-of-way and also some utility easements on there as well. So if you have any questions, I can answer those for you.
Okay, any questions? I'll study this. Any questions?
No.
If not, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move that we accept the dedication of land for public purposes, the Adams Valley final plat as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please begin voting with Commissioner Griswold.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Did you vote?
I voted aye. Thank you.
I didn't.
Next item on the agenda, mayor's appointment. I move to appoint to the City Planning Commission Harold Bill Waugh to an unexpired term ending May 1, 2024.
A second.
Has been moved and seconded. Please begin voting with Commissioner Preisinger.
Aye.
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 And I vote aye. Thank you. Next item, consider sole source bids, contracts, and agreements. Consider sole source bid for 2021 police car equipment.
Chief Kitchen.
Madam Mayor and Commission, the Police Department is requesting the Commission authorize a sole source purchase from Safe Fleet Coban Mobile Vision in the amount of $26,395 for the purchase of 4 replacement in-car cameras. These are our dash cams mounted inside of the police cars. We operate 24 police cars that are equipped with the Safe Fleet Coban in-car systems. The Police Department has operated these systems since 2013. The entire system is complete with back-end software servers that maintain and store data. We would not be able to consider other vendors unless we considered replacing the entire system. We are very satisfied with Coban. It works very well for our police cars, and it has been very reliable in the course of the time that we've had it. The 4 cameras that we are replacing have reached the end of their useful life cycle. The budget impact, the police department would fund this purchase from 2 different sources. One, the 2020 burn grant in the amount of $14,385 we talked about earlier in the year. I applied for, you gave us permission, we applied for, and that money is here. The remaining balance of $12,011 would be funded from the balance we have in the capital improvement budget of $37,114 that we buy police cars. We add an additional amount of money in there for the extra equipment that goes in there, like police lights, sirens, cages. This funds would be, the remaining funds would be used to make up the balance of the amount. So again, I would ask the commission to approve the sole source bid in the amount of $26,395 from Safe Fleet Coban Mobile Vision to replace our 4 in-car dash cameras.
How old are the current ones you're replacing?
From 2013. We have begun the process of replacing ones 3 or 4 at a time as we buy new cars, that sort of thing.
I'm sure you told us before, but
And what do you do with the old cameras?
We will evaluate them. If they have some value, we usually put property available on Purple Wave and have it auctioned. There may be some smaller police department somewhere that might be able to use some portion of it, but we'll make that available for property, the property disposal rules for the city of Leavenworth.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So on these that you replaced the whole dash cam, the 7-year, it has lasted. Is that part of it due to you need computer software as well to upgrade, as well as the
Right,
hard equipment?
Right, there's usually, the system we have done, we've maintained and updated with software that runs the entire system. The cameras that are that we have now still function, but they are sort of reaching the end of their life cycle. That's about the window that they last 7 to 8 years, something like that. So it's time to think about replacing them, which is where we are.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Chief, I have a question about the burn grant.
Yes, sir.
Is that something that just comes up every once in a while, or have we been applying for that, kind of on a year-by-year basis?
We have applied for that every year for as long as I can remember, when I was the deputy chief, so it's been around for a very long time, and it is specifically designated for law enforcement agencies at a local or state level to buy this type of police equipment.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the sole source bid in the amount of $26,395 from Safe Fleet Coban Mobile Vision to replace 4 in-car camera systems.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Please begin voting. Commissioner Preisinger.
Aye.
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 And I vote aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, first consideration ordinances. The first one is first consideration ordinance rescind.
No, number 7. Number 7.
I'm sorry. No, Kansas Department of Transportation. Thank you, Mr.
You want to get to the good
I
stuff?
want to get
early.
ahead of myself here.
Consider an agreement with Kansas Department of Transportation for 4th Street improvement. This is
This will be our, Brian Faust, our Director of Public Works.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Commission. Before you this evening is Kdot Agreement 142-21 for the planned rehabilitation of 4th Street through our downtown area. In March of 2019, we submitted 2 connecting link grants to Kdot. The first was from Choctaw to Delaware, and the second was from Delaware to Seneca. In 2020, we were notified we received the first grant from Choctaw to Delaware, but we did not receive the second one from Delaware to Seneca. The Connecting Link program is a cost-share program with Kdot. Kdot covers 85% of eligible costs, and the city covers the remaining 15%. Kdot, while not selected, we did ask Kdot if we could include the section from Delaware to Seneca with this program, and they did say yes. And in the agreement you have before you this evening, the limits are shown from Choctaw all the way to Seneca. The one thing with that, the city will be responsible for all costs associated with that second 2 blocks. Staff does recommend that the City Commission authorize the mayor to sign the agreement, Kdot Agreement 142-21, between Kdot and the City of Leavenworth related to the improvements on 4th Street between Choctaw and Seneca. On the policy report, under recommendation, it shows Agreement 141-21. If you make a motion tonight, it would need to be 142-21. Also, as a project update, we are currently seeking qualifications for design consultants. We are to receive those June 16th, and we'll hopefully make a decision shortly after that about what firm to use.
okay. Any questions?
Mr. Faust, I'm reading this, the state, KDOT's involved in their bid lettings in March of 2023, so realistically this would be done in the summer of 2023?
That would be correct.
About 2 years from now, okay.
I think we would try to expedite it if we can.
Right.
I think we'd like to do this starting in 2022 if possible. But right now the paperwork shows March.
But KDOT says they'll let the bid in March of 2023.
Correct.
Yeah, so we may have an opportunity to advance that a little bit, and maybe with some temporary notes and get the projects going before that. So that's our goal right now.
Okay, good.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Any other questions of Mr. Faust?
No.
If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move that we approve the authorization for the mayor to sign agreement number 142-21 between KDOT and the City of Leavenworth related to improvements to 4th Street between Choctaw Street and Seneca Street.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please begin voting with Commissioner Griswold.
Aye.
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 And I vote aye. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now we're moving on to first consideration ordinances. Number 8, first consideration ordinance, rescind special use permit.
Or Carla, I'm sorry.
Madam Mayor and Commissioners, this is just the annual time that we look at any special use permits that weren't renewed or don't need to be renewed or anything like that. And so we only have one this year, and it's the special use permit at 1700 10th Avenue. That was a special use permit to allow for a video rental and sales a facility there. That Family Video that was previously occupied that property went out of business earlier this year. And so that special use permit is no longer applicable to the property, so we would need to have that rescinded.
The last one.
Are there any video rental places left in the Kansas City area? Anybody know?
I think this
That
was
could
the
be
last
one of the last
Red
ones.
box.
What? Is it?
Red box.
Red box or
Yeah.
blue, yeah, in Walmart.
Well, I know they definitely a dying breed or a dead breed.
The dead breed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Are there any other questions?
no.
If not, I would entertain this is consensus. So do we have a consensus to move forward with this?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
I vote yes too. All right, next item. First, consider ordinance special use permit daycare at 2137 Birch Street.
Julie?
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. As you said, this is a request for a special use permit to allow daycare at 2137 Birch Street. Property is currently zoned R16, high-density, single-family residential, and childcare centers are an allowed home use in that zoning district with issuance of a special use permit. The applicant is licensed by the state of Kansas to care for a maximum of 12 children, dependent upon the ages of children under care, which is pretty typical for home daycare centers in Kansas. And she has previously operated a daycare center in a previous home in the city prior to this location. So there are some conditions of determination to look at for daycare centers, so I'll just go through those here for you. The first is that it shall not be located along an arterial street. The property is along Birch Street, which is designated as a residential street, so that has been met. The second is that it shall provide at least 100 square feet of open space per child, and that open space shall be 100% enclosed by a minimum of a 4-foot high fence or wall. The property does include an approximately 3,000 square foot backyard enclosed by a 4-foot high wooden fence, and the backyard is adjacent to other similarly fenced residential backyards. The third is that there shall be a loading zone capable of accommodating at least 2 autos for the ease for picking up and discharge of passengers. The property does have a driveway that can accommodate up to 4 cars, and so that has been met. The fourth is that it shall conform to all requirements of the state of Kansas and shall acquire state of Kansas Child Care Center license. They have provided a copy of their license, which you have in your packet. The fifth is that all child care centers operated in residential zoning districts shall be the only legal residence of the operator, and this home does function as the only residence of the owner and operator. And the sixth is that child care centers in residential districts may have 1 non-illuminated monument sign with no more than 3 square feet per side and a maximum of 2 sides, or 1 non-illuminated sign affixed to the main structure of 3 square feet. The applicant is not currently displaying a sign at her property. So then I'll just go through the general special use findings that we have to consider for any special use. The first is that the proposed special use complies with all applicable provisions of the ordinance. Staff does believe that all applicable provisions have been met. The second is that the proposed special use at the specified location will contribute to and promote the economic development, welfare, or convenience of the public. Staff does recognize that child care centers are an integral part of economic prosperity for working parents in the community by allowing them to have care for their children while they work. The third is that the special use will not cause substantial injury to the value of other property in the neighborhood in which it's located. Staff does not feel that the proposed center will cause any substantial injury to the value of the neighborhood. We checked, and we currently have a total of 17 child care centers operating under special use permits in the city, and we have not even received any complaints on any of those, so we've got pretty good precedence for that. And the fourth is that the location and size of the special use, the nature and intensity of the operation involved in or conducted in connection with it, and the location of the site with respect to streets giving access to it are such that the special use will not dominate the immediate neighborhood, so as to prevent development and use of neighboring property in accordance with the applicable zoning district regulations. And there are no new structures or building modifications being proposed with this, so it will continue to look and function as a single-family home without dominating the neighborhood. So as required by statute, notification was sent to property owners within 200 feet of this property. After that, we did receive correspondence from 4 property owners that were in opposition to the child care. Those letters have been included in your packets for you to read. The Planning Commission considered this at their May 3rd meeting and voted 4-1 to recommend approval of it, subject to conditions as recommended by staff. And during that meeting, 1 person spoke in opposition to the child care. Okay. So staff would recommend approval of the special use with 4 conditions as we've listed out. Just to go over those real quick, that a minimum of 1,200 square feet of open space, 100% enclosed by a minimum 4-foot high fence or wall be provided and maintained in good condition. Again, that's already being met. Number 2 is that a copy of the permanent group daycare home license shall be provided annually upon renewal by the state of Kansas. The third is that the operation shall be limited to a maximum of 12 children. And finally, that no additional home occupations may be carried out at the residence. So if you have any questions, I can answer those for you. And I know that the owner of this property is here as well.
Okay. Bruce, do you have any questions?
I have a question. The current owners, Mr. and Mrs. Reese?
They're here if you want.
Yeah, well, I don't need that, but they've been operating a daycare center for six or less children, currently, correct?
She could speak to, how many they had previously been
But the
operating with.
reason, what I read in the policy report was the reason this was being put in front of us was that they were going to expand above 6.
No, this is a new residence for them. They've recently moved into this home.
They can operate with 6 without a license, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes, and
Yeah.
she had previously operated a daycare in her previous home
Yeah,
Right.
not-
in the city,
yeah.
which is what the policy report said.
Would she still be able to conduct the child care, the daycare functions that she's currently doing if we did not, go forward with approving the special use permit in terms of what she's doing now? Would she be able to do that with the 6 children, 6 or less children?
She could watch up to 6 children
Right.
without a special use permit, that's correct.
Could you summarize just summarize the opposition of the 4 people from that neighborhood?
A lot of the concerns related to additional traffic in the neighborhood, and just, seemed to be a general feeling that this was a commercial use within a neighborhood.
Right. Vehicular, more, what I remember was that I don't know, how long has this subdivision been around? It's been around a while, but it's got supposedly just like 2 entrances and exits. And some of the residents, some of the neighbors are concerned about the increase, because right now they say there's there's obviously during the times of drop off and pickup, an increase in the number of cars, and concerns about safety. And just the general overall concern about the character of the neighborhood if we were to approve the doubling of the number of children that would be part of this child care facility. So that's one of the things that I saw. There was a pretty good summary by Mr. and Mrs. Welling that I read pretty carefully. And so, is there anybody here to speak in opposition to this particular zoning? Special use permit?
I'm not sure, based on the
Okay.
reservations that we had, I don't believe so.
We'll see if anybody else has comments. I'll come, I'd like one more chance at seeing what my fellow commissioners think about this particular request.
So you did state out of the 17 current home daycares, there hasn't been any complaints, correct?
My office has not received any
Okay.
since I've been here.
But they're in other neighborhoods, correct?
Correct, there's not
Throughout the
a
community.
special use permit for a daycare in this neighborhood.
Ms. Hurley, the other 17 daycares, special use permit daycares in town, the regulations that we put on Mr. and Mrs. Reese is no more, no less than what's on the other ones, is that correct?
Correct, that's
Everything's the
consistent
same?
across the
Okay.
board.
And I've heard some of the thoughts that maybe it'll increase traffic, but if we're all being a little bit realistic, that's a fairly dense neighborhood, and I would say good chance, I don't know, but over half the kids are gonna be coming from 2 or 3 blocks from there. There's a lot of kids in that neighborhood, and that'll just be a handy one. And even if it does, you're talking 12 cars, if there's one parent or one child per car, 12 cars in the morning, 12 cars in the evening, out of 150 homes, I don't see the traffic impact at all.
There's a traffic impact, there's already a traffic impact according to, the 4 people who are opposed to this particular action. So if you double it, there is gonna be, a traffic impact, at least during the times of drop off and pickup. So
Yeah.
I disagree respectfully with
Yeah.
Commissioner
Okay.
Preisinger.
Is this a gated community?
No, it's not.
Okay, because I saw something.
Do we have a gated community in this town?
I guess what I want to know is there a homeowners association?
I think Ms. Reese would like to speak, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
I think the owner.
I
Yes, let's
don't think there is.
Would you like to come to the podium and just state your name, Ms. Reese?
Julie Reese, the resident of 137. When it comes down to traffic, with 10, okay, right now we currently have 10 kids. there's only 5 parents. That's 5 cars. Because the majority of the kids actually are multiple kids families. So therefore, it's gonna be 5 cars, no more than 6, because most kids that do come to our daycare has a sibling that comes along with them. So it goes from 12 down to, let's say, I would say top of the morning, maybe 10. Also, because we have extended hours, most of our parents, we mainly work for people that have unique hours, like military. Everybody don't work 8 to 5. Some people work midnight, Walmart. So therefore, you have people that come to our house, and right now, even right now, with my looking at the schedule now, the most I have that come at one time is 2 cars, 2 parents. They come at 4:30. Everybody else is 3, 4, 5. You know what I'm saying? So it's one come in, one leave out. And so, and what I do is I try to make sure that when I accommodate my parents, that I make sure I look at the schedule to see what time they're coming in, what time they're coming out. Even before we came to this neighborhood, we was in the other neighborhood, I also take in consideration of my neighbors. I don't want to impact them. So what I do is I make sure parents come in at a certain time. They come in, they walk the children up the sidewalk, bring them to the front door. Kids are required to hold hands with their parents until they get to the vehicle, and then when they come back to the vehicle, the parents, they're under the parents' control, but they must be they get in the car. When we go on field trips and outing, we have a buddy system. Everybody has a friend. We hold hands. We go to the vehicle. We go, and the vehicle is always parked right at the front door, so they're not like just out and about. Okay.
Okay, Mrs. Reese, how long have you been a daycare provider?
In this area, 9 years.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I mean, when I said this area in Leavenworth.
Okay.
9 years.
And prior to that?
Yes, ma'am. Previous years, I mean, off and on, about 30 years.
Okay.
I have a 31, 32, and a 19-year-old.
Oh,
So these,
okay.
this fight that I'm fighting is not for me, because I have no kids in the daycare at all.
Right,
These are just
right.
kids on the outside that, like I said, I just would like to provide care for families that's in need for children.
Right.
and child.
Okay.
And so you said currently 10 children, 5 cars.
5 cars.
Family
Yes, sir.
members.
I just know there's a huge need for daycare in our community.
yeah,
and just
that's true.
Thank you
I agree.
for doing what you're doing.
We've only been in the area 4 months. We've received 7 cars from neighbors in the area, but I don't have nowhere to place them. So therefore, I was like, I'm sorry, I have a waiting list. But like I say, there is a need for childcare in that area.
Yeah, there
Okay.
is.
Thank you.
All over
Thank
town.
you.
Are there any other questions?
Just out of curiosity, Mrs. Reese, those 5 sets of kids that you have, are they from the branches, most of them, or not?
No, sir.
They're not?
In
Okay.
fact, they're family that I had before.
Okay.
Most of my kids, when they come, they're there at least 2 or 3 years. They don't.
Yeah,
even-
no, I understand.
It's not like a high turnaround.
Yeah. Once you're satisfied with daycare,
Yes, sir.
you keep them there until they go to school. I know how that, I can remember how that works.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the things that some of the people, neighbors of the 4 opponents mentioned was a potential decrease in home values. Now, I don't necessarily think that's the case, although in terms of interest in a particular house, for houses in vicinity of the Reese's house, I think that's a possibility. Home values right now are, skyrocketing, so I don't really buy that. But I think that there could be, if some neighbors decided to maybe try to sell their home, they might have a little bit of more of a challenge with all the activity of at least twice a day with the cars and things like that. One of the opponents talked about, and they're not here to speak for themselves, so I'm just kind of summarizing what I saw in the packet, that sometimes cars that were picking up or dropping off were parking in their driveway. I don't know, I can't confirm that. That was what one of the people said. I don't know what Mr. Reese would say about that, but there were costs that were identified by these 4 people, 4 neighbors in the subdivision that I thought had some validity. I thought maybe one of them at least would have come maybe to speak tonight, but I don't know. I mean, I am concerned about the safety, and there's only kind of like the 2 entrances and exits to the subdivision, and I don't know. I'm not sure why staying with the status quo wouldn't be the right thing to do at this point. But the fact that nobody is here tonight to speak to that, says something, I think. But
Any other comments? I know, like Commissioner Wilson said, there is a definite need, and
Well,
especially for nighttime. I mean, I know from having
Yeah,
worked
she has
in the
different
hospital
hours, yeah.
that it's difficult to get daycare at night. And if they're spread out, then that makes sense in their times. Any other comments or questions?
I'd just like to say, I do support the additional opportunities and venues for childcare within the city of Leavenworth. I just looked at this and thought that maybe the costs were exceeded the benefits of doubling the amount of children who would be part of the operation at the Reese's house. But I do support and know that childcare is a very important need of our families within Leavenworth. But there did seem to be some delineation of costs by the four people, or the four neighbors who were not in favor of this particular special use permit.
Okay, thank you.
I can understand some of the neighbors' concern. I don't want to say they're not valid, but I look at, I don't know I can't recall all 17 special use permits we have for daycares throughout the city, but I can come up with 6 or 8 of them right off the top of my head, and all of them have one or just 2 entrances, one side of the street, the other side of the street to get there, you know, in an emergency, if you make that argument, which I don't think holds water. And 5 cars, and if it goes up to 6 or if it goes up to 7, say she gets 2 more children, 1 family each, so go up to 7 cars a day staggered. I don't see how anyone could even count those, that'll have any impact at all. I don't see that. And you know, if somebody does park in someone else's driveway, of course, that's something that you handle on a neighbor, please don't park in my driveway. Some people feel that the space on the street in front of their house is their private place, when in fact it's not. We know that's a public street, but I think most people, if you're picking up a child or dropping one off, you're gonna park as close in that driveway, if at all possible. You're not gonna park in someone else's driveway and traipse across a couple of yards. I just don't see the issues being enough to stop anything here. I think it's a good plan, and these are the same rules that we have for all our other special use permits, and they've worked fine.
Any other comments or, okay. With that, I don't have any other comments either. Is there a consensus to move forward with this?
Yes.
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 Obviously, there's 3 for consensus, but I would not
Thank you, sir.
agree with that. So.
Okay. So we'll move on. Next item on the agenda, first consideration ordinance rezoning of 5136 Lakeview Drive.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a request to rezone the property located at 5136 Lakeview Drive from R19 medium density single family residential to GBD general business district. This is an 11.8 acre site. It's currently owned by Sandra Harrison, Donna DeMette, Gloria Mercer, and Darlene Lynch. It is under contract to be purchased by 4M Pioneer Holdings, who is acting as the owner and applicant for this project.
Okay.
Now, the rezoning is being requested in order to allow for commercial development of the property. The property is located directly along Eisenhower corridor, and it is identified as appropriate for commercial uses in our future land use plan. Currently, there's a planned Culver's restaurant for this location. If you can scroll through, there's some pictures of it. Which would occupy the southeasternmost corner of the property, with the remainder of it to be developed at a later time. And any potential development that would come along later would be reviewed by staff at the point that it came through. So the site plans for this were reviewed at the April 15th Development Review Committee meeting. A few of the items that staff discussed with the applicant at that time were related to traffic, access, internal circulation, stormwater, and utilities. And those are all items that we would expect to be addressed with the applicant at the time of or prior to any building permits being issued for the site. So I'll go through the conditions of determination for rezoning. The first is the character of the neighborhood. So again, the property is 11.8 acres in size and is currently occupied by a single family home. And it is located directly along the Eisenhower corridor. To the east is the Armed Forces Insurance Office Building, the Leavenworth County Health Department, and the Hallmark Cards Factory. To the west is the Frontier Community Credit Union, Woods Gas Station, and Dillon's Grocery Store. To the north is a 26.6 acre single-family residential lot with some additional large lot single-family residential on to the north of that. And then to the south across Eisenhower is a strip commercial center, which is in the city of Lansing. The next is the zoning and use of properties nearby. The properties to the north and immediately across Lakeview Drive to the east are zoned R19, medium-density single-family residential. Properties to the west and further east are zoned OBD, Office Business District. Property further to the west is zoned GBD, General Business District. And property to the south is again inside the city limits of Lansing, but is zoned as a planned unit development. The next is the suitability of the subject property for the uses to which it has been restricted. Again, the property is currently occupied by one single-family home. As this property is immediately adjacent to the Eisenhower Road corridor, which is a major 4-lane thoroughfare and does have a high volume of traffic, and it is adjoined by commercial and office uses also along this corridor. Single-family residential is not the most appropriate use of the property. The next is the extent to which removal of the restrictions will detrimentally affect nearby property. The proposed rezoning should have little detrimental effect upon surrounding properties. Again, it is primarily surrounded by commercial and office uses with single family to the north. The existing home to the north is approximately 565 feet away from the property line, and there would be screening and buffering would be required at the time of development of any portion of this property adjoining that residential lot to the north. The next is the length of time the subject property has remained vacant as zoned, and this property has always been single-family residential in nature. The next is the relative gain to economic development, public health, safety, and welfare by the reduction of the value of the landowner's property as compared to the hardship imposed by such reduction upon the individual landowner. The proposed rezoning should have a positive effect on the economic development within the city and region with the ability to add commercial uses, and will increase the value of the subject property through development as a commercial site. The next is the recommendation of permanent or professional staff. Staff does recommend approval of the request. The next is the conformance of the requested change to the adopted or recognized comprehensive land use plan being utilized by the city. And again, the area is identified as appropriate for commercial uses on the future land use plan that we have in place. And the final is such other factors as may be relevant to a particular proposed amendment. And there were no other factors that we would note. So with this, again, we sent out notices to property owners within 200 feet within city limits and 1,000 feet outside of the city limits. So on the south side of Eisenhower, we had to notify within 1,000 feet as required by Kansas statute. We received communication from one property owner in opposition to the request. After that mailing, and the Planning Commission did consider this at their May 3rd meeting. And they voted unanimously to recommend approval of the request. During that meeting, 4 people spoke in opposition to the request for this property. A couple of those in opposition were not within the required notification area. They were outside of that area. So on May 14th, a protest petition regarding the rezoning request was delivered to the city clerk's office. After review by the city attorney and based on property areas calculated by staff, the attorney and staff have determined that the protest petition does not meet the threshold requirements of Kansas statute, so as to require a supermajority vote. And just basically, for a protest petition to meet that threshold, it has to include the signatures of landowners of 20% of that notification area. And we only had one property that had, within that notification area, that had signed the protest petition that accounted for about 14% of the notification area. So that 20% threshold was not met. So if you have any questions for staff, I can answer those. The applicant and developer for the property is here. I believe the owners and their representative are on the go-to meeting. And then we have Attorney Crow, who is representing the property owners to the north who are in opposition to it.
Okay, how do we proceed here?
The commission could take comments, or you could start with comments from the public, or from the interested parties, however way you wanted to go.
Go ahead and do that and take comments from the interested parties.
Mark, do you want to start?
Madam Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Mark Schuler. I'm born and raised in Leavenworth, graduated graduate of Leavenworth High School, so I just graduated the other day. Brings back memories. I'm a classmate of Chief Kitchens, and Sandy Simmons used to be one of my teachers, so it's a whole time day for me here. But I'm a retired Air Force colonel, spent 23 years in the Air Force, and when I retired from the Air Force, we decided that we wanted to get involved with Culver's Restaurants. And my immediate thought, my dad still lives in Leavenworth, my brother and his family still live in Leavenworth, and we wanted to come home, and we wanted to build a Culver's in Leavenworth. And that was back in 2014, and we were not able to find real estate, and ultimately we built our first Culver's in Plant City, and then we bought a second Culver's back in 2018 in Lawrence, and so we currently own 2 Culver's. Over time, a couple of years ago, I had a conversation in our Platte City location with Commissioner Preisinger about opportunities to bring a Culver's to Leavenworth. And again, I've discussed with Mr. Tedder and also with Mr. Kramer at different times the opportunities to get in. Real estate was always the issue about bringing a Culver's to Leavenworth. Culver's, National Culver's Corporate, always very supportive of me doing a Culver's in Leavenworth, but getting the right real estate has always been a challenge. And so, again, I bought the Lawrence location in 2018, and again, looking to do an additional location, approached the city again for ideas on potential real estate, and Mr. Kramer and Mr. Tedder have been fantastic at throwing a bunch of different ideas out at me, and ultimately we took a look at this 5136 Lakeview Drive property, and we're thinking a little bit out of the box from, again, I was looking for an 1.5 acre pad site. This is not an 1.5 acre pad site, this is an 11.8 acre site. But again, goal of bringing a Culver's to Leavenworth in the first place for me was, again, to bring an additional economic development to my hometown. And that site's not in Leavenworth today, but with an 11.8 acre site, this property provides and affords the opportunity to not only hopefully bring a Culver's to Leavenworth, but also for additional economic development, and it fits all of the criteria. Growth area, there's so much exciting things going on in the Eisenhower corridor today that, again, developing this site with the Culver's kind of being the initial anchor, bringing it in there. But again, we believe, and I've got a large brokerage firm in Kansas City that's represented me on my previous Culver's purchases, and they believe it's a great site as well, and we bring potential additional opportunities for development as we go forward with this. And so, you know, everything that we've worked on commercial property is always about highest and best use, and based on the location of this property in Leavenworth, I mean, it's my firm belief that this would be the highest and best use for the property, and I think we'll be outstanding neighbors to the properties around us, and again, bring that economic development that I think we all want for Leavenworth, Kansas. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions, Mr. Schuler?
None at this point.
No. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Mark.
Anyone else care to speak at the podium?
Would that be in favor of the rezoning? Anybody else to speak in favor?
Anybody speak, either, whoever wants to speak.
Okay, I'd ask for those in favor to speak first.
Okay, anybody else in favor care to speak today? Okay.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor and Madam Pro Tem and commissioners. I'm Mike Crow, Crow & Associates, 302 Shawnee. As you all know, usually my wife, Marty, and law partner is tasked with being with me and keeping me out of trouble whenever I speak. But she's pretty much retired from the practice and does not-for-profit pro bono work, and is at a meeting concerning that right now. So I'd like to introduce, if I may, Sarah Vitt. Sarah Vitt is from Leavenworth County, and she graduated recently, very recently, from law school, and passed the bar and has joined our firm, and she will try to take Marty's place and keep him out of trouble. We represent Lakeview Acres, and the owners of Lakeview Acres are local, Deborah, Howard, Linda, and Bernie Bristow. And Bernie is also here in the back, available to answer any question that you may have of him. Lakeview Acres is located on Residential Street, Lakeview Drive. And it is zoned R19, medium-density, single-family residence, same as the property currently up for rezoning, and the same as all the property to the north. And actually, Lakeview Drive goes all the way down to kind of touching Cody Park and Limit. So it's always been residential, and it's been there a long time. What I'll refer to as the Jan property, if you'll take a look at the first slide that's up there, I don't know if you can see it too well, but you'll see from Lakeview going east, there's a driveway. You could see it going off Lakeview to the east of the driveway, going to the Jan homestead. And just north of that, where the blue line is, that is the boundary line with Lakeview Acres and the Jan homestead. And you can see the Jan homestead in the picture at the end of the driveway. So they adjoin at the northern part of what's up before you now. We have slide 1. On the left, I apologize. You'll see the notice that was given by the Planning Commission to those who were provided notice by mail. And we've got it marked A, B, and C on that side. And also on the color map, you can see A, B, and C. And they're actually presented as 3 separate tracts. And we would prefer that you look at the 3 tracts as 3 separate tracts. A is the Jan homestead, which is the kind of almost skin-colored cream. Well, considerably lighter than me, but cream-colored is the Jan property. That's A. B is the frontage, Eisenhower, the frontage. C is green. So the kind of, I guess, peach, we'd call it, is the Jan homestead. It's on 4 acres. And then behind it to the west is green. And then B is the frontage on Eisenhower. There is no plat, and if we could go to the next one, as you know, you just passed it. There's no plat for the Jan homestead. And we believe it should be considered separately. Now, at the very outset, I want to say emphatically on behalf of Lakeview Acres that we're not speaking against Culver's in any manner whatsoever, being on Eisenhower. Colonel Schuler certainly has an excellent reputation, has proven himself to be a successful business person, and we've heard good things, and it will be a welcome addition to our city, and we'd like to see it come in. I'd also like to thank the staff, and I'd like to compliment Julie and Paul and the rest of the staff for the excellent work that they've done with you all in trying to bring Culver's to our community. There is a concern, though, before I get into some of the rest of it, about the city allowing for entrance and exit, ingress and egress, to Culvers from the west side of Lakeview Drive. Because on the other side, that is the east side of Lakeview Drive, is residential until you get to the office building district, OBD, which is Armed Forces Insurance. And Lakeview is built and is residential. Realize that you've discussed and have gone ahead with improvements to that intersection. But nevertheless, that obviously will present a problem for everyone using Lakeview Drive, especially if there's backup on traffic going in and out, things like that. And there's plenty of room on Eisenhower. I respect what Colonel Schuler has indicated, is he wants to get as many businesses as he can in there, and I don't blame him. But nevertheless, from a zoning perspective, that should not be the main consideration. There are only single-family, large lot homes on the west side of Lakeview, to Muncie, and then on both sides on back to Cody Park. Lakeview is residential from Eisenhower north all the way to Cody Park and Limit. And if we could go okay, that's slide 2. And slide 3, notice was given by the city of the public hearing before the Planning Commission to rezone the 3 tracts, A, B, and C, totaling about 12 acres, from medium-density residential to general business district. That's a major change in zoning. The Leavenworth property owners within 200 feet of the proposal were given written notice. The Lansing property owners within 1,000 feet were given notice. The 1,000 feet to Lansing is contrary to the notice requirements in the state enabling statute of KSA 12-757B, as well as Leavenworth's own zoning ordinance. It states that 1,000 feet applies to notice of those residing in an unincorporated area. And I think we'll all agree Lansing is incorporated. So more notice, 1,000 feet notice was given to those in Lansing, but only 200 feet in Leavenworth. The result is that of the owners given notice, only 3 were Leavenworth property owners that received notice, and there were 42 or so in Lansing. Now, we filed on behalf of Lakeview Acres a protest petition because, quite frankly, we couldn't figure it out where the 20% and how it was being counted. And just to be on the safe side, we wanted to fight it, wanted to at least get our petition in. And our research indicates that given too much notice to Lansing, even though it seems unfair, is not a fatal flaw. And I'll yield to your excellent city attorney, David Waters, on that, but it just doesn't seem fair. Just so many more were mail notice to the Planning Commission meeting in Lansing than were in Leavenworth, and a lot of those were homes in Fairway Estates. In addition, there are zoning changes that we believe can be made to Lakeview and Eisenhower that are not nearly as dramatic a change as going from single-family residential to the most extreme general business district. First off, neighborhood business district allows for commercial and restaurants like Culver's. To the west of the site is the credit union, and it is zoned OBD, Office Building District. It is not zoned General Business District. The same is true to the east, which is the AFI building, the Armed Forces Insurance Building. And it likewise is zoned OBD, Office Business District. And the land, let's see if we can see it here. Yeah, you can see it on that, or just a second. Yeah, you can see it on that. Between Lakeview and AFI, which is to the right there, you can see where that is also R19, single-family residential. And I recall, I represented Armed Forces Insurance when they built their building. And I remember that there was a desire that right up next to Lakeview be kept R19 because Lakeview is residential, is a residential drive. I don't recall now, because it's been so many years ago, but I do recall that being done, because that's what the city wanted. Now, having said all of that, now on to the major concern. And the major concern is how can we get Culver's here without dramatic changes that will adversely affect the property owners all on residential Lakeview Drive. And our concern is rezoning the Yon Homestead, 4 acres from residential to general business district. A very dramatic change. General business district in the city of Leavenworth would allow on that property tattoo parlors, auto truck, heavy vehicle repairs and sales, moving and storage, custom and light manufacturing. Now, nothing against any of those businesses, but we don't think that the Yon Homestead, that's fitting use for that, whether the house stays there or not. And in addition, it's not the best use. The best use for the Yon Homestead, that 4 acres, is on a residential street, is residential. And as you all know, and I know Julie knows, the general rule in zoning is it should be presumed that the least desirable use will probably go in there sometime. And we don't want that. We don't know what will happen in the future, but the least desirable allowable use in a particular zoning probably is going to wind up there sometime. And we sincerely believe that the best use is residential for that 4-acre tract. Now, looking at what Julie went over, the golden rule, as you all are familiar, probably familiar with the terminology of golden rule, is the Kansas Supreme Court in the Golden case set forth certain criteria. And Julie has done an excellent job of setting forth the city's position. And focusing just on the Yon Homestead, the 4 acres. Currently, the character of the neighborhood, east, west, north, and south is all zoned R19 medium density residential right now. Obviously, to the north, it would remain so. To the east, of course, we have the buffer, the residential, quite a bit of it, on Lakeview for between the Armed Forces Insurance and Lakeview Drive. And of course, to the south, looking only at the 4 acres, we would have, hopefully where Culvers would go. And to the east is the credit union. So those two are bookend by office building district. And we believe that the character of the neighborhood is residential as to the homestead, 4 acres. The zoning and use of properties nearby, I've already commented on that. Everything adjacent to the 4 acres on the homestead, east, west, north, and south to yon is residential, R19. The only thing that would change is to the south, if you rezone along what I've marked as B, and we can go back to that real quick. What we had marked as B, go one more.
The part along Eisenhower, you're saying?
Yeah, go one more, there we go. B would be Culvers, that whole area. Now, as far as the green goes, that's okay too, rezone that, that's fine. The homestead is our concern, the 4 acres homestead, is our focus. The suitability of the subject property for the uses to which it has been restricted, again, is the on-homestead is not immediately adjacent to Eisenhower Road. And it is not part of the Eisenhower corridor. It is in fact part of the Lakeview residential street. Now, in the plat, there is, and I must respectfully disagree with Julie on this, we strongly disagree that a 20-foot landscape buffer would provide what will always hopefully remain and should remain in Lakeview Acres and on north on Lakeview Drive, residential. That's hardly enough to shield, light manufacturing, car dealerships, something like that. I mean, that just does not seem appropriate. Along Eisenhower, Culvers is positive. Rezoning Yon Homestead on Lakeview is dramatically negative for the property north, because it's all residential. A lot of it is heavy, large lots. And it's not being platted now. If something would change, you have plenty of time to rezone it.
Okay.
There's always time to rezone. And the comprehensive plan, if we could flash that up, it's the next one, I believe.
How much longer is this going to be?
Very quick, I'm getting there.
Okay.
Where's the comprehensive plan? Okay, you can see the comprehensive plan, and you'll see over toward the left where there is, right on Eisenhower, land that would exclude the Yon property. See how much closer it is to Eisenhower than the
Let me
rest
go
of
up
the
here.
area?
Direct me, because I'm having trouble finding
Okay.
this right here. Here's Eisenhower, where's Lakeview? Here's Lakeview. So what do you,
Okay, go to your left.
go to my
All
left?
keep going, but Yon Dillon's, that.
Okay, yeah, this is Dillon's in here. This is Woods, this is Dillon's. Casey's is right here.
Right, but residential behind Dillon's,
Right.
yeah. So it would be, that's residential. That's residential.
I just wanted to get
So, yeah.
clarification on the map.
So we could get that, we could get Culvers in there very easily. Now, very quickly, the elephant in the room we have to talk about. There is a binding legal agreement that runs with the land forever between Art and Lucille Yon and the previous owners of Lakeview Acres. It wasn't called Lakeview Acres, of course, but the previous owners, no relationship. And if we could flash that up, and I don't know if you can see it, but it specifically states that the parties of the first part, that was, I believe they're, Medeski, I think that was their name, agree that they will not erect any buildings or other structures within 100 feet of the north and west lines of the property of the parties of the second part. Okay, Lakeview Acres is bound by that. They cannot build anything within 100 feet of their boundary. The parties of the second part, that were the Yons, that's Art Yon and Lucille Yon, will not subdivide the real estate development any part of the above described property. However, they shall have the right to erect an additional home for their children. And anybody who remembers Art Yon will greatly appreciate the following. It is further agreed by the parties here too that this agreement is binding upon their heirs and assigns forever. Not much wiggle room there. You know, and
What was the first part again? I know second part says you can't subdivide it, and then obviously that's not even being requested on the Yon property. What was the first part, Mr. Crowe?
the first part is Lakeview Acres will not be able to erect any buildings or other structures within 100 feet of the north and west lines of the property.
Okay.
Now, the city of Leavenworth has in lawyer talk, or lawyer jargon, non-cumulative zone districting. And what, in other words, the city rezones all of it, all 3 tracts, to general business district. That means no lesser zone is allowed. No lesser zone. You will not be able to build a residence anywhere in what is proposed to be rezoned, neither A, B, or C. It will never be allowed, but the agreement obviously says the 4-acre homestead residential is supposed to be residential. We got a problem.
Okay.
And there are court cases on that back and forth. The only Kansas Court of Appeals case seems to indicate, seems to lean toward the binding agreement. But we're willing to work with the Yons and Colonel Schuler to hopefully keep residential on what should be residential. You know, that 4 acres would be perfect for villas or townhomes or something like that. And one solution, why rezone the 4 acres if you don't have to now? Finally, all the options listed on the proposed ordinance, the proposed ordinance before you fails to list what the enabling statutes of Kansas state and the city ordinance states. And that is that you can return, all it says is you pass a rezoning, all 3 tracts, or you don't. There is, and this was not mentioned unfortunately, but there is the third required by state statutes, and that is to return the rezoning request to the planning commissions with instructions to consider keeping the 4-acre Yon Homestead residential R19.
Okay.
Planning commission meets in about 10, 11 days, something like that. So that is what we were requesting, and we thank you for the time.
Mr. Waters, is there, I don't know which way to go here, where to go here, and I know that Gloria Mercer is also on the line.
I mean, I'm happy to address my thoughts on this, or if you'd like to hear from other members of the public first, that's certainly your prerogative, or how you want to.
Okay,
I thought there was no people speaking on behalf of it, from the public.
no, that's,
I'm here.
or I'm willing to
Okay.
be open
Okay,
here.
that's fine, that's fine.
Let's hear from David. Gloria, we'll put you on hold here for a minute, okay?
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think my camera's working anyway.
That's all right, that's all right.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts on this that I'm happy to share with the commission. Let me start kind of with a very, very broad point, is that, you know, it's important for you to remember tonight that you're not approving a Culver's.
Okay,
This is a rezoning
right.
decision from a residential to a general business district. You have certain factors that are set forth in your staff report and your code as to what the factors are for a rezoning and what that means. So, you know, there are aspects of a rezoning that, you know, may come down the line with building permits, site plan reviews. So, you know, matters like access, screening, lighting, you know, things like that are certainly issues that at some point may come up and may even be part of your consideration when you're considering the character of the neighborhood and such, as you know what's gonna come. But I do just wanna remind you that, you know, this is, to keep your focus on, this is a rezoning from a type of use, residential, to a different type of use, business. And this isn't necessarily tonight, just one application that you're approving a restaurant or a certain layout tonight. You're not, to my knowledge, you're not really doing that tonight. I kind of want to talk on a little bit next, this notion of there being three different tracks, or that you should treat them as such. I would respectfully disagree that that is how the law says you should consider these. I would note that, yes, there are different legal descriptions, but this is one tax parcel here. And my reading of Kansas statute, and I'll just kind of give you some of the highlights of what it says, is that, you know, you're talking about the area proposed to be altered, and that is the entirety of the area. The entire property is to be designated by a legal description. That's what you have. You have combined, you know, maybe you have different legal descriptions. XXX makes up the whole. The same statute that was posted up there speaks about how all notices shall include a statement that the complete legal description is available for inspection. And it's based on that complete legal description on what notices are sent out on, the 200 or 1,000 feet. What I think you would get in trouble doing here is if you were to take what is essentially a single tax parcel and one area that's a complete legal description and try to break it out into little bits and parts. You'd essentially be being asked to provide a 200-foot notice as to this part of it, a 200-foot notice as to this part of it, a 200-foot notice as to this part of it, and then perhaps take 3, 4, 5, how many different votes on each aspect of it until you come to a full. And I don't believe that that's the way the Kansas statutes are intended to be interpreted, or not even intended. I don't believe that that's what they say on that. So I think that doing that is problematic. You have one legal description, you have one area that is the area proposed to be altered. To be sure, and I don't want to, you know, preclude what any votes might be. I've certainly seen situations where an area was, a larger area was requested to be rezoned, and that was denied. And, you know, an applicant came back and said, okay, I'm gonna reduce the size of that area, and that's a separate application. So that, you know, certainly is something that could be done, but I don't believe it's appropriate for you to have 3 separate votes or notices on, and things like that. There's a question raised as to the notices and the 200-foot for, versus 1,000 feet. And I will grant that there is a little bit of confusing wording in the statute on this. What it says is that the general rule that I think all of you have probably kind of heard is that it's 200 feet within a city, 1,000 feet with its county. Well, what if it's 200 feet, but it's not a county, it's another city that's next to you, right? The actual language of the statute says that if a city, I'll say Leavenworth, proposes a zoning amendment to property located adjacent to or outside the city's limits, the city again being you, the area of notification of the city's, Leavenworth's action, shall be extended to at least 1,000 feet in the unincorporated area. I don't necessarily read unincorporated area as meaning the county in that case. I believe it means the area that is not incorporated by the city of Leavenworth. There is a reason, I believe, and again, I haven't, gone through the entire legislative history of this, but, one of the reasons that I believe that the 1,000-foot notice is given for residents that are not within the city's limits. Yes, they do get more in that sense, because they're also not represented by you. You're not answerable to those people at the ballot boxes. And so they extend that, other people in other cities, other areas might not be as up to date on what goes on in the city of Leavenworth or in any city in which they do not have representation or they're not following, what happens on all of that. And so that's why I believe the purpose of that is done. So my reading of this is that the proper notices were given and that the proper calculations as to areas for the protest petition were accounted for. The last point that was raised up was this restrictive covenant. It may be binding. It may be. But that is not for you to make a determination on. That is a private agreement between private parties, and it could be enforced or not enforced in a court of law where a judge might hear evidence one way or another. I mean, we have a document here. I don't know if that's the only document of record. I don't know if this document has been amended. That's the type of thing that, if there was to be a dispute between private landowners as to their private agreements, that is something that could be enforced in a court of law if one party believes that it is enforceable in that way. I equate this a little bit, and this is not a perfect analogy, so forgive me for the imperfections in it. To let's say you live in a subdivision that's got a homes association, and just to keep numbers simple for purposes, the city of Leavenworth establishes a standard that houses can be up to 30 feet high. And this subdivision has its own private rules which govern themselves that says can be no higher than 25 feet high. If an applicant came to the city of Leavenworth for a building permit and complied with the city of Leavenworth's requirements, you would issue that building permit and you would rely on the homes association to enforce any sort of private agreements it might have. The city of Leavenworth is not going to get involved in whether a house in a subdivision is permitted to be blue or red or any other color. If there are those standards that an HOA has, then that is up to the HOA to enforce those private restrictions as they would see fit. So again, you are not sitting as a city commission in the position to enforce private contractual matters between parties. You have a wealth of case law, Kansas statute, the Golden decision, among others that followed, provisions of your code that identify for you what are the factors for you to follow on this. I think it would be fair to say that perhaps the existence of certain covenants may educate you as to what the character of a neighborhood is and such. But it is not something that I would say that you have the authority to say that you are enforcing it one way or another on this. You should consider this matter in accordance with the regulations and the zoning standards that you have. And if private parties feel that there is a binding restrictive covenant in place, there are paths for that to be enforced.
Okay. Thank you. I think we need to start to wrap this up pretty quickly. Any questions of the commissioners? Did you want to hear from the owner or not? Or are we ready to discuss more questions?
If you want to speak, I have a couple questions, but I'd like to hear the owner speak if they.
Ms. Mercer, are you still there? Is she there? Okay. Gloria, are you still there?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry. My audio is a little garbled, so I didn't hear you. I'm going to try to turn my camera on, but it doesn't look like it's working. Can you see me? If not, maybe I'm coming up now.
But we can hear you.
And so, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. First of all, thanks for the opportunity to address the commission tonight. My name is Gloria Jan Mercer. I live at 79360 Briarwood in La Quinta, California, and I'm here to speak on behalf of my sisters, myself. We're the daughters of Arthur and Lucille Jan and the current owners of 5136 Lakeview Drive. And we want to provide our support for the rezoning of our property from the R19 to General Business District. A little background, I must say that my dad was very pro-business, and it was his dream to sell his property for development. In later years, he boasted that he had the last remaining large undeveloped parcel on Eisenhower, and when he was in his 80s, he visited local realtors asking them when they would find a buyer for his property. So he sold part of it there on the corner of Eisenhower and Shrine Park Road, which was also rezoned and has been the site of the Frontier Credit Union since the mid-2000s. Dad was a strong supporter of the development of Leavenworth, and in the 50s and the 60s, he served on the Leavenworth Planning Commission many years as the chairman. He was a true businessman and was delighted to see the city develop. He was, of course, involved in several local businesses himself, primarily his grocery store on Spruce Street, where the city library is now located. But I think we have to all acknowledge that things change. When we were growing up, the area around our property was all homes and farms, but look where we are now with Armed Forces Insurance, Frontier Credit Union, Dillon's, Wood Soil, Walmart, and other businesses that are right nearby. It's time for a change, and we're happy that Mr. Schuler has a vision for the property, starting by bringing a Culver's restaurant to Leavenworth, and his eventual development of the entire parcel supports the overall goals of the city's comprehensive plan. I do want to address the 1949 restrictions. And while I respect the Lakeview Acres representative, his remarks in the petition that he filed appear to be misrepresentation of the facts, because the facts and the documents don't support what was just stated and what is in the petition. There's no mention whatsoever in the restriction that Tract A of the total site to be rezoned is to be, quote, I'm quoting from the petition, was to remain forever remain residential. But rather, the restriction simply states that the property cannot be, that portion of it cannot be subdivided. So I just wanted to comment on that. There were also comments made about the impact on traffic. So regarding that, I think we need to trust that the city will work it out and do what's right and adjust as the area continues to grow and to develop. And there's the cameras that came on. Yes, the city has certainly grown, mainly to the south and to the west, and I'm certain our parents are very happy and very delighted that our property, where we all grew up, will be part of the future development and growth of Leavenworth. So on behalf of my sisters and I, the property owners, we thank the city for considering our rezoning request. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Mercer. Okay.
I believe Michelle Burns, who's the attorney representing the owners, wanted to speak as well.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Burns, 4630 West 137th Street, Leawood, Kansas. And I am the attorney for Ms. Mercer and the sisters who own the property, Mr. Jan's daughters. And I'm afraid the gentleman who just spoke for the city and my own clients stole a little bit of my thunder because they got through it, but I'll try to be pretty quick. I think that, the city went through the golden criteria and hit on, which is the requirement for rezoning. The legal requirement is to go through those and see what, matches. This is the majority of the surrounding property of the entire tract supposed to be rezoned is commercial in some sort, and rezoning is in harmony with the use of the nearby properties. The current zoning is not at all suitable for this property as a whole because to have single-family residential surrounded primarily by commercial development on Eisenhower Road, which is a major thoroughfare, does not make any sense, would devalue the property. Any residential development there would be a lower value residential property on a major intersection surrounded by commercial uses. There will be little, if any, effect on the property north. And just again, to address some of the items that Mr. Crowe had brought up, there's no point in separating out the 4-acre tract, under the doctrines of merger and this is all under one ownership. Just because there are separate tracts doesn't mean they need to be taken into consideration separately. The restrictive agreement, whether enforceable or not, is not a factor in approving rezoning. In fact, staff addressed that when and if that comes up for a development plan, then staff, planning, and the city commission would possibly require rebuffering and other green space to allow for that. And because of the residential rezoning that is behind that. And Mr. Crowe even acknowledged that with the Dillons, there's residential right behind that. So that seems to be kind of with the comprehensive plan of the city of Leavenworth, where this area along Eisenhower Road is commercial with residential building up behind it where it is. The city's planned for the expansion and improvement of Lakeview to accommodate the Culvers. That's already in place. And just to reiterate, the agreement, whether enforceable or not, is not a factor for approving rezoning. And there were misstatements as to the agreement. It's not requiring it only to be residential, but just cannot be subdivided for development.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Burns.
But I will conclude it at that, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are tasked with either or not coming to a consensus for rezoning.
To move it forward to the next reading.
Pardon?
To move it forward to second reading, a consensus.
I'm sorry, move it forward, a consensus.
Yep.
To move it forward. to
One
second.
question I have, Madam Mayor. Ms. Hurley, what is the standard for protest petition? What percentage of the property owners?
20%.
20%. And we had, would we have 7%?
14.
14%.
It's about it's approximately 14%.
Of those given notice.
It's 20% of the area that is required to be notified.
200,000 feet.
So for example, I believe we had a couple signatures perhaps on some properties that were not within the notification area.
Yeah.
Those are not, those are not counted towards.
How many were in the notification area?
There was just the one property, the Lakeview Acres to the
No,
north.
I mean in the total notification area.
It was,
Whatever 14% of, how many?
It's 14% of the land area, so not 14% of the number.
Oh, it's 14% of the land
Of
area,
the land area,
not
so
the
in
landowners.
that,
Okay.
yeah, so the county GIS department generates those,
Okay.
mailing lists for us, and included in that, they include the land area of each parcel, so we were able to come up with that total notification area and pretty easily figure out.
So if you had 1 acre adjacent and another person had 5 acres, they had their vote was worth 5 times what the 1 acre.
Yes.
If that's a simplistic way of saying
You
it.
could meet a 20%, I've seen it happen before with just one landowner.
Okay, okay.
Just depending on how.
But
the
we
lines
did
run.
not meet the hurdle.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. Any other questions?
I've just got
Yes.
one, and pretty straightforward with the property, the 12-acre tract and the property we've been talking about in terms of the former the Yon homestead. That is under contract though to 4M Pioneer Holdings LLC. Is that correct?
Correct.
And of course, they're the developer, right? Mr. Schuler is working with them. They want this whole 12-acre, they would like it rezoned, correct? In terms of what they would like to get out of it from the standpoint of economic development and their business interests, correct? I mean,
That's what they
yes, sir. I
requested.
mean, that's pretty obvious, I guess, but I just wanted to point that out, because if, that's all I have. I mean, they would be less, they would be, I think, concerned and less, just if we were to kind of carve off this, you know, the property, or the part of the property in the northeastern part of the of this 12-acre tract, correct?
Well, the rezoning request is for the entire
Right.
parcel.
Right.
And so I think if there were to be a smaller rezoning request, that would need to be a different application, or.
Yeah, I mean, the way the statute reads is that, you know, the notice that was given is sufficient to permit you to actually do a lesser area if you wanted to. Now, that is not the recommendation before you.
Right.
So, you know, that would require, if you wanted to go that route, either overturning the planning commission's recommendation some way, or, as Mr. Crowe did point out, there is another option of this can be referred back to the planning commission for further consideration, questions and such, and you would need to provide a statement direction as to what else you want them to consider.
Absolutely. That's all I have.
What's your wishes then? Because it's first consideration, consensus or not?
Yes.
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 Thank you.
So when do we bring it back, Madam Mayor?
I don't know.
We'll put it on the agenda and let you know.
Okay.
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 Thank you,
Thank
Mr. Crowe.
Thank you.
And I would just
Thank you,
add,
Mr. Schuler.
I would add for, just a reminder for the next time as well, no matter what decision you make on this, with the final motions and such, even if it's not reflected in the ordinance, you'll want to probably make a record as to your consideration of the factors on that, so that there is a record as to why you as the commission approved or disapproved one way or the other. That's always good to have a record of that as to your consideration, what you liked, what you didn't, what you agree with on the golden factors, et cetera, et cetera.
And this is first consideration.
Sure, yeah, but for final consideration, just put that bug in your ear.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crowe.
Thank you to the
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
young
Mr.
family.
Schuler.
Can we take a 2-minute break?
Let's do a full five.
Full five. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, first consideration ordinance rezoning 711 Marshall.
Ms. Hurley?
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. Again, this is a request to rezone 711 Marshall from R16 High Density Single Family Residential to GBD General Business District. This property is the former Cushing Hospital, which closed in October of last year and is currently vacant. As you're aware, the property was recently acquired by Leavenworth County, who is the applicant for this request. So the request is being made in order to allow reuse of the building with a mix of county offices and private healthcare providers. No expansion of the building footprint is proposed at this time, and the use of the building will be within traditional business hours. So the existing building was constructed as a hospital in the late 1800s, and there were several additions over the years since that time, and it did operate as a hospital until its recent closure. The property is considered legal non-conforming since the previous use of the property as a hospital is not allowed within R16 in the current development regulations. So any non-conforming use of a structure may be changed to another non-conforming use as an exception granted by the Board of Zoning Appeals. Also, if a non-conforming use is abandoned for a period of 24 consecutive months, any subsequent use must comply with the regulations of the zoning district. So given that this is R16, really the only thing that can be done here is single-family residential. Given, you know, that there are a variety of uses planned for this, and working with the applicant, we determined that general business district was the most appropriate district to request a rezoning to, so we wouldn't be running into instances of multiple variance requests or exception requests, or you know, differing lengths of vacancy in the building. So that's how we landed on the general business district. So I'll go again through the conditions of determination as we did with the last one. So the first is the character of the neighborhood. Again, the subject property is the site of the former Cushing Memorial Hospital and is currently vacant. To the north is a multi-story medical office building. To the south is the Carroll Mansion, which is occupied by the Leavenworth County Historic Society. 2 blocks to the north is the former Medical Arts Building, which was rezoned to General Business District in 2017, and the remainder of the neighborhood consists of single-family homes. B is the zoning and use of nearby properties. All surrounding properties are zoned R16, high-density single-family district, except for the site of the former Medical Arts Building 2 blocks to the north, which again was rezoned to GBD back in 2017. The next is the suitability of the subject property for the uses to which it has been restricted. The subject property was built in the late 1800s as a hospital and has functioned as that since the time it was constructed until its recent closure in October of 2020. The building has housed medical uses consistently since its construction and is unfit for single-family residential use. The next is the extent to which removal of the restrictions will detrimentally affect nearby property. The proposed rezoning should have little detrimental effect upon surrounding properties. The building has housed medical offices since its construction and provides adequate parking facilities for such uses. It is anticipated that the neighborhood will experience a decrease in traffic as the building will not be used on a 24/7 schedule in the same manner that the hospital was, and no detrimental effect on nearby property is anticipated due to the rezoning. The next is the length of time the subject property has remained vacant as zoned. Again, the building has functioned as a hospital since it was constructed in the late 1800s until the hospital's closure in October of 2020. The next is the relative gain to economic development, public health, safety, and welfare by the reduction of the value of the landowner's property as compared to the hardship imposed by such reduction upon the individual landowner. The proposed rezoning will have a positive effect on public health and welfare by providing space for needed health services while preserving and adaptively reusing an historic building. The next is the recommendation of permanent or professional staff. Staff does recommend approval of the rezoning request. The next is the conformance of the requested change to the adopted or recognized comprehensive land use plan being utilized by the city. The area is identified as appropriate for institutional uses on the future land use plan, which medical and hospital uses falls within, and so staff would find that the proposed use is in conformance with the overall goals of the adopted comprehensive plan. And finally, any other such factors as may be relevant to a particular proposed amendment, and there are no other factors to note. So again, after we sent out the required public notice to owners within 200 feet as required by Kansas statute, we did receive communication from the Leavenworth Historic Society in opposition to the request, and that letter is included in your packet. The Planning Commission did consider this item at their May 3rd meeting and voted 4-1 to recommend approval of the rezoning request. And so if you have any questions, I can answer those, and representatives of the county are here to answer questions for you as well.
Any questions?
I do have to make a quick comment, real quick. In the interest of full disclosure, I'm employed by the Council on Aging, which is an agency of the applicant, Leavenworth County, Kansas. As I understand from our city attorney, as this application is a non-contractual matter, but rather a legislative matter, I am permitted to act on this matter so long as I have disclosed my interest as a county employee on the state-required statement of substantial interest. I have done so. Nevertheless, I still want to assure the commission that I have not prejudged this application. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions of Ms. Hurley?
What were the major points of the opposition by Leavenworth County Historical Society, please?
The letter's in here.
Yeah,
I recognize that, but I'd like the public to know.
Okay.
Yeah, and this was published in the packet that went out.
Right.
Let me get to it. Again, just feeling that rezoning it to general business district allows for a variety of commercial uses in a residential neighborhood, and they did not feel that that was an appropriate use for a residential neighborhood.
The other thing they said, which I don't think is right, is that the spot zoning request falls outside of the city's economic development goals, as stated in the comprehensive plan. You don't agree with that statement, do you?
Correct.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. That's the only only objection, and they're not zoned single family either, and you can't do anything with a property that's zoned single family with a big building in the middle of it, so I have no other comments than that. Any other questions of Ms. Hurley or of our commissioner and attorney that are here?
Well, I have another comment. I mean, it wasn't us, and even as a city, that Cushing, St. Luke's, decided to leave. That was, they're a corporation, and now here this building, sits.
But we're just here to rezone it. That's the
Just to
only reason we're
rezone,
here.
that's it.
Is to rezone it.
I know, but still, it was, with the Leavenworth Historical Society.
It cannot
Yeah.
operate as a single-family residence
Yeah.
right now, so,
Nope.
I mean, I guess it could, one person could live
That'd be a
there.
really big house.
Madam
Really
Mayor,
big house, yes.
the county councilor and one of the county commissioners have been sitting here for 2 hours. Maybe they'd like to,
Yeah.
if we give them a couple minutes, would you like something to say?
No, they're good.
Well, welcome to the meeting, and please
They're
come.
still
We'll
smiling.
see you
They're
next
still
Tuesday,
smiling.
too.
That's all. They're still smiling.
Okay, any other questions? If not, do we have a consensus to move forward?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, that's done. Let's move forward. First consideration is approved. Or consensus.
Can I
First
add
consideration.
one thing? I would like to thank staff.
Vicky, can you?
Get up to the mic,
Thanks.
please.
It was just, the staff was great to work with.
I do this purely at the direction of Commissioner Cos. I would like to compliment your staff. They've been extremely professional and courteous. They assisted the county at every step of the way on this. I think their analysis to you, and I believe it's similar to all of your cases, has been fair and objective. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cos. Commissioner Cos. Okay, moving on. Consent agenda.
Oh, well, no.
Oh, no,
Oh,
one
We got 12.
why do I keep skipping sections?
Because you want to go home. We all.
First consideration ordinance text amendments, development regulations. Sorry, Ms. Hurley.
Okay, no, that's okay. This is our annual review of the development regulations that you'll see about every year at this time. And so just to kind of recap, in using the development regulations on a daily basis, we continuously come up with items that maybe need to be modified or tweaked a little bit to just better serve what our goals are. So we did take just a brief overview at a previous study session, so I'll just go through these kind of a high-level overview. If you have any questions, let me know as we're going through them. But you have had a chance to look at the ordinance that Carla prepared to see all of the details. So just first, section 2.02 in regards to plating, these are just kind of some housekeeping issues, forming up our requirements for some plating. I'm not really changing anything. Section 4.03, property development standards. This is just clarifying some language that we had found to be confusing as we've worked with it. Section 4.04, in regards to our use standards, again, just clarifying some language that we have found to be a little bit confusing as we use it. Section 5.03, in terms of parking requirements. Here we are adding an allowance for partial gravel driveways on residential lots over 2 acres in size. This has come up over the last year and before this last year as we've had some large lots, residential lots develop in the city, and currently our regulations require the driveway to be completely paved. So this just gives a little bit of leeway with that to work with our building codes and fire codes to maybe have a little bit more reasonable driveway requirement for those large lot single family lots where the house is set a ways back from the road. Okay. The next is section 8.04, signs excluded from permit. Just correcting a little bit of language, and then this is the section we had talked about before. CASA had made a request to have some temporary signage allowed for organizations similar to theirs, and we had looked at this language previously, so we're just adding language to allow temporary signs without a permit for public service organizations to address that need that we have heard about. And then just revising this language in this section related to political signs, we moved that to a later section in the sign code, which we'll get here in a minute. Then section 8.08, signs permitted in residential districts, cleaning up a little bit. We have multiple residential districts that allow mixed use, sort of removing those from the overall residential sign requirements, giving them their own section to allow some more flexibility with signs for businesses that are allowed by right in those districts. Increase the allowable sign area for home-based businesses. Home-based businesses that are allowed by right, we're only allowed a 1/2 square foot sign, which is about that big. And so just making it, that allowance basically the size of a real estate sign, so that they can, really have that be beneficial for them. And then just correcting some inconsistencies with temporary signage that are allowed on residential lots.
Okay.
The next section, 8.10, signs permitted in the neighborhood business district. This is where we removed that residential mixed-use district to give some flexibility to allow for signage for businesses that are allowed in those districts. Section 8.12, temporary signs. This is where we added the language for political signage to get in conformance with Kansas state statute. And that specific language we did take a look at a couple of months back with the commission. So you have seen that before, so we're just getting that incorporated here at this point. The next section, 8.15, non-conforming, hazardous, dangerous, illegal, and prohibited signs. This was a request that came from our Board of Zoning Appeals. Over the last year, we've had a number of BZA cases for non-conforming businesses. So we have non-conforming businesses that are allowed by the regulations that may be operating in a residential district, and they've been there forever, and so they're non-conforming and they're allowed to continue. However, they were not allowed to have a sign because they're in a residential district. So they come in for a new sign, they had to go get a variance for their business, that the business is allowed, but they had to get a variance for that sign. So BZA asked us to take a look at a way to allow signs for those businesses that are already allowed. So that's what we did there. The next is section 11.03 in the BZA powers and jurisdiction. Here we just removed some criteria for exceptions. The criteria that were written in are not required by state statute, and with a couple of exceptions that we've had come up over the last year for BZA, the way those criteria were written was really confusing and not really applicable to the cases that we'd have come forward, so we just removed that. And then finally, Appendix A, which is the use table. We went through the entire use table and just corrected quite a few inconsistencies and just uses that we really felt like were allocated in error or not in the best possible way that they could be. So I won't go through every single one. There's quite a few little changes in there, but if you saw anything that stuck out, if you have any questions, I can answer that for you.
Okay. Thank you for
And
your hard work on it.
Yep, and the planning commission did take a look at these as well as
Okay.
recommended approval. I don't think I got that in my report.
Good. Any questions?
I just have a quick one, Madam Mayor.
Sure.
On the temporary signs, the 8.12 temporary signs, the political, our discussion when we addressed this a few months ago was allowing campaign signs in the public right-of-way for 45 days immediately preceding any primary, blah, 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 and shall be removed 2 days following said election. But, so that was really the difference, right? Before we had, you couldn't put it in the right-of-way.
Correct.
But signs shall be set back a minimum of 6 feet from the back of curb. The only thing I can say, having put out some signs in the last several years, is that, for instance, on Broadway, that you know, if you go 6 feet, you're gonna be right in the middle of the sidewalk. So I don't know how we ended up with 6 feet. Can you shed some light on
Yeah,
that?
that's, we looked at what other cities have
Yeah.
done, and so that was pretty consistent. And so if 6 feet falls in the middle of a sidewalk, it'll just have to be on the other side of the sidewalk.
On the resident side, where the residence is, right, which is really kind of what we do now. So maybe that was, the part of our thinking on this thing, but,
Well, it was so confusing. This gives us a little more guidance. I mean, you can't fit every condition in our city because of the way the sidewalks are.
And the thinking is to keep them right off the curb so that they're not a visibility issue.
Yeah, right.
If you've got something that's, right on the back of the curb, that's gonna potentially
Right.
impair visibility
I
with
agree.
driveways and that type of thing. So that's the thinking on that.
I'm just saying that in most cases, it's gonna be just the way it has been for the last, years and decades because of the 6 feet thing. And I just point out that situation existing on Broadway. So if that commission's fine with that, that's fine. We didn't have a big discussion about that, but it was something I've thought about over the last 2 months since we first discussed it.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay, is there a consensus to move forward with this text amendments, development regulations?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. That's that. Thank you, Ms. Irving.
Thank you, Julie.
Next item on the agenda, consent agenda.
I move to approve the claims for May 8th, 2021 through May 21st, 2021, in the amount of $871,241.58. Net amount for payroll number 10, effective May 21st, 2021, in the amount of $344,465.40. Includes police and fire pension in the amount of $8,804.19.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please begin voting, Commissioner Griswold.
Aye.
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 And I vote aye. Thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. Kramer, do you have anything to see?
Just two very quick notes, both good news things. Next week, baseball and softball games in the recreation, city's Parks and Recreation League kickoff. We had well over 340 athletes, boys and girls, participated this year. We set all kinds of records. And the games start next week. And the Blue Sharks will be playing Friday night at 7:15, led by Coach Paul and his 5-year-olds. And then just a reminder that Woolman Pool opens on May 31st. So we're excited to see our residents out enjoying Woolman Pool. We have good staffing on lifeguards, and we got some good concession workers, so we're hoping for some good weather.
That
That's all I
sounds
have.
wonderful. Thank you so much. I'll go around the horn here, but I think I will go first, if that's all right with y'all. I thank Mike Griswold, Commissioner Griswold, for drafting this for me, and I think we will send out a letter from the commission in regard to this statement from the Leavenworth City Commission to Leavenworth citizens. The Leavenworth City Commission is saddened to hear the passing of Medal of Honor recipient and Leavenworth, Kansas resident Charles C. Hagemaster. Lieutenant Colonel Hagemaster, U.S. Army retired, passed away on May 19, 2021 at the age of 74. We extend our sincerest condolences to his wife, Barbara, 2 children, and the rest of the Hagemaster family. He was awarded the Medal of Honor in May 1968 for conspicuous. Thank you. Gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of, I wouldn't use those big words, Mike, of his life above and beyond the call of duty during combat operations with the 1st Cavalry Division in Vietnam in March 1967. He served a full career in the U.S. Army and retired from active duty in 1990. Lieutenant Colonel retired Hagemaster served on the board of the Congressional Medal of Honor Society, was involved in local civic groups, and supported the greater Leavenworth community, including service events sponsored by the VFW Post 56 and Wreaths Across America activities at the Fort Leavenworth and Leavenworth National Cemeteries. A man of impeccable integrity, Lieutenant Colonel retired Hagemaster was admired by all who knew him. We salute his lifetime of service. He will be greatly missed by his adopted hometown of Leavenworth and the broader community of active duty U.S. servicemen and women and military veterans across our nation. May he rest in peace. Thank you. All right.
Thank you for saying that, Madam Mayor. I'll miss, Chuck was my neighbor for the last 30 years, and I'll miss him, and our thoughts are with his wife Barb and his son Scott and daughter Stacy. Difficult time for them.
Thank you. Commissioner, do you have anything?
No, I have nothing at this time.
Commissioner Wilson?
No, ma'am.
Nothing further, Madam Mayor.
All right. Nothing else? Great. Thank you, everybody.
I move that we close. I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
I know, it's like, I think she's gonna get up.